Ewin. You call me Shad one more time and I'm gonna tag my braid at you so hard you will never forget it. Hi guys, and welcome to the third episode in Chibis of Time. If you're watching this, maybe you have already watched number 0 and number 1, which is like 1 and 2, but I called the first one 0, so there you go. This episode is going to be focusing on the second chapter of The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan, and the episode is called Strangers. I am going to be drawing the characters that I hear mentioning in the chapter that I am listening to on Audible of the version narrated by Michael Kramer and Kate Redding. I am going to be drawing only the characters that have one line or more or are in some way relevant to the story. So in this chapter, there's going to be 5 characters. In this chapter, there's going to be 6 characters that are mentioned in some way, and, 6 new characters, of course, apart from the ones that I have already drawn in the previous episodes. So the ones that I'm actually going to be drawing, though, are 3, because the other 3 have already been drawn in some capacity or other. Mistress Elvire, who's Egwene's mom. She's the hostess of the Wine Spring Inn, and she's really good at cooking or something. Moiraine Damadred are, Gandalf of the situation. She has already been drawn. And Landman Dragoran that I have recently drawn in the Warder batch. The characters that I have to draw instead are Master Luhan, who's the smith of the little village of Immonsfield, and Ewin Finngar, who's just child guy. He's like this 14 little pest who likes to hang out with Rand and Matt and Perrin, but obviously they don't want to hang out with him because he's young and they are like 18, so of course they don't want to hang out with 14 years old. We've all been there. The third character is Padan Fain, extraordinary peddler who's gonna have one of the most underwhelming arcs of all Wheel of Time, I think, personally. He started out really well. I mean, he was super creepy and he just, I don't know what happened to him. Nobody knows, honestly. There's no reason in delaying the inevitable. I am going to be starting. Not true. Actually, I always forget this part. If you like these videos and you want me to keep making them, please like and subscribe. Leave a comment if you agree with what I'm saying or if you disagree with what I'm saying. I would very much appreciate it. Now we can start.
Let's go!
We start the chapter with Rand and Matt that are carrying like casks of ale or brandy, I can't remember, down to the cellar because they have been, trapped into this chore by Rand's dad and they have to do it, otherwise they can't go and, have fun on their own. And when they go into the inn and go down to the cellar, they see that a lot of the people from the village council, which is basically all the most important men in the village that, have to take important decisions. All the guys from the village council are there, like in the sitting room of the inn, waiting for Master Elvire and Tam to fill up their pipes and, come and join them. Obviously, they have something very important to talk about, but, the lads don't know what it is, and Matt doesn't really want to stick around to find out because apparently Master Luhan looks at him with like a scowl or something, and Matt just sort of like scurries down to the cellar. And we find out in a moment it's because Matt has basically taken Master Luhan and Mistress Luhan's dogs, powder them with flour, and just let them loose to pretend that they were like ghost dogs or something. So obviously this plan backfired and the dogs just came back running to their house and entered and just got all the house dirty with flour. So now Mistress Luhan is pretty mad. And presumably Master Luhan, he's too. Apparently his wife like chased him out of the house because of that. Again, another one of those situations where Robert Jordan just randomly decides to make women behave in completely irrational ways and just completely overreacting. Kind of like playing into the stereotypes of the shrew of the angry housewife who's mental and like always nagging their husband. Not like the best look, to be honest. Master Luhan is described as having arms that are the size of most people's legs. So he's super beefy, but he's really sweet as well. We later find out that he can't stand the sight of blood. So there you go. So I'm gonna draw Master Luhan using Lan as reference, just for proportions. Just kind of funny the idea that he would have like super massive like bushy eyebrows. So whilst the lads are just like bringing, you know, the casks up and down, Mistress Elvire arrives and is like, oh, you guys look hungry, and she says that she's been baking honey cakes and there's gonna be like some for them when they finish. What is a honey cake? I don't know, but it sounds really good. I feel like if someone were to actually make Wheel of Time food after the series come out, like as a sort of like marketing thing, that would be amazing. So I'm just throwing it out there. Mistress Elvire seems really nice, and Rand likes her as well because he says that she doesn't mother him quite as much as other women. I guess that's something to be thankful for, I guess. If you're constantly like harassed because you should be married, or because your dad, like who's a bachelor and a widow, should also be married. And I'm like, do women really do that though? Like, do random women in your community just come up to you and let you know that you have to be married? Because I feel like they don't. Maybe in like more like closely knit communities they do. Then as they just, you know, eating their honey cakes or whatever, Ewin arrives and he's like, Ewin that I'm gonna, you know, draw in a second, arrives and he's like, oh my god, guys, there are strangers in town. And Rand is like, are they wearing a black cloak? And Matt as well is like, oh my god, do they have a black cloak? Or, you know, do they have like a black stallion or whatever? And Ewan is like, no, why would you say that? He's got a green cloak or brown. You can't really understand, you can't really see it unless he's moving. And she's got, you know, the best cloak of all, blue like the sky and finer than anything I've ever seen on Sunday. And of course, he's talking about Moiraine and Lan. And Moiraine, as I was saying before, she's a resident Gandalf, only with better like fashion sense and an obsession for blue. They're like, oh, okay, fine. Because of course they were both really scared that it was going to be the Black Knight instead of the, you know, just equally terrifying actually and equally dangerous Aes Sedai and her warder, but they don't know yet. So Matt is like, oh yeah, I knew that. That's what I was gonna tell you about actually. That, you know, there are strangers in town, and at that specific moment, because Moiraine has a knack for always arriving at the right time. Point. I like how, listening to this again, I realize how perhaps the inside joke that Moiraine arrives always at the right time, and there's even a chapter, I think, in Memory of Light that is called a knack. Is it in My Memory of Light or is it in the one before? I think maybe it's in book 13. Anyway, when she reappears, basically, and she's like, yeah, I have a knack for arriving always at the right time, in joke number 1. And in joke number 2, maybe the fact that also Gandalf actually says, you know, that a wizard always arrives when they mean to, and therefore they are never late nor early. So, I'm gonna move on to Ewin's sketch, which is gonna be of him just sort of going like, oh my god, guys, there's strangers, which is the best thing that can happen, I guess, if you live in a backwater where there's like nothing to do. And nobody's ever a stranger because, as Rand points out, well, there's like people from other villages, they aren't really strangers. There's merchants and peddlers, but since they usually come back every year and they're always the same ones, they don't count as strangers either, just as outsiders. They're trying to kill like some ravens that are just looking at them, and Rand describes as if he can feel the gaze of the raven on him because they've just like gone out of the inn, and he looks up and there's this raven who's behaving very oddly for a bird. Like it's like purposely staring at them. They get a rock and like throw it at him, and he just sort of like flies a little bit and then he's like, yeah, you didn't get me. And they're like, yeah, I've never seen a raven behave like that, or any bird. And Moiraine is like, yeah, they are vile birds to be avoided at the best of time. Of course, now we know, well, now I know, because On my first read I didn't, that it's because the ravens are spies for the Dark One. And to be fair, even on a first read, I was like, oh, Rand has this feeling like he could feel the gaze of the mid-roll, like the Black Knight on the road, because obviously he's magical. And also, speaking of foreshadowing, when Ewin and Rand and Matt are talking, like Ewin is describing what happened when Moraine and Lan arrived into town, like in the village. The first person that they met was Nynaeve. And we all know Nynaeve loves to tug her braid, get angry, and hate Moraine, at least for like the first half of the books. Those are her like 3 favorite things in the whole world. So Moraine arrives and she's like, oh, thank you, child. As a second-time reader, I now know that she sensed like ability to channel, and therefore, by default, she called her child because that's what you call a novice in the White Tower, a child. That's nice to see. That sort of detail that you only get on a second read, basically, and then you can get it and you're like, all smug, like, oh, that's why. Nynaeve isn't that impressed, like, she's not appreciating that. She's like, you call me child one more time and I'm gonna tag my braid at you so hard you will never forget it. But yeah, Moraine apparently like apologized afterwards and she was like, oh, I'm so sorry, you're the wisdom. So yeah, Ewin is like telling us all this stuff. Matt mentions the Gleeman and Ewin is like, oh my god, is that true? Or are you like taking the piss again, like last time with the ghost dogs, or you know, the time before with some other like ridiculous thing that Matt told him. And apparently like one of Matt's favorite pastime that he loves almost as much as Nynaeve loves tagging her braid is to tell ridiculous tales to the younger kids in the village. I don't appreciate that because, to be honest, when I was growing up, I was that kid. I used to hang out always with like kids that were a bit older than me, and I was extremely gullible. Like I am now as well. But I feel like I mask it a little better. But when I was younger, I was so gullible, and people just like made me believe the most ridiculous stuff. So I'm with Ewin. I'm with Ewin. And so Matt is like a gleeman and a lady that we don't really know she's an Aes Sedai yet, but whatever. And fireworks. That's gonna be the best Beltane ever. And it's like, yes, Matt, you are precisely right. It's gonna be great. I think that's kind of funny that when Matt describes Moraine and Lan to Rand, he's like, they're horses. Have I talked about their horses? Because they are the finest horses I've ever seen. Like, they're so tall and so pretty. I want to marry them. He says that both horses are really tall, like tall and sleek. I know that, you know, there's a lot of people who love those covers, so I don't want to take the piss. I just don't share the enthusiasm, I guess. Which I think can also be because I never actually bought any physical copies of Wheel of Time. Like, all the copies that I had were on my iPad, like, or, you know, as ebooks. So I have seen the cover, but when you have an ebook, obviously you just see the cover the first time when you like tap on the actual book and then it opens up, right? So like you don't just look at it every time that you pick it up, or, you know, leaving it around the house. So I think that's why I'm not as like attached to it as a sort of like a sentimental thing. So for the third character, I'm going to draw Padan Fain, even though I just realized by getting the end of the episode that he doesn't really get named in this episode. He's just arriving at the end of the episode, basically, on his wagon. But, you know, I said I would draw him, so I'm just going to draw him in this chapter, whatever. I always imagine Padan Fain as like a very skinny, sort of like oily kind of man. So that's why I'm like trying to make him a little bit skinnier, which is actually really hard when drawing chibis, because chibis are by nature like chubby and like cute. So like trying to draw slimy or, you know, creepy or villainous guys, it's actually quite hard. Before Padan Fain arrives, the boys have their first exchange with Moraine, which is actually really interesting because we see an interaction that is like so naive and that makes people go like, oh, bless their heart. Like they don't know what's gonna happen. They don't know that everything is going like downhill from there. It's just really funny to see Matt and Rand specifically just like going like head over heels for Moraine, just praising her beauty and just being so embarrassed like in front of her, like because they're just, you know, two boys in front of what they think is a highborn lady or just like a woman who carries herself with a measure of elegance and power, right? They're just like really, oh my god, like trying to, I'm just like trying to figure out how do you hold reins, because I'm drawing Padan Fain just like on his cart, like with his reins. And I'm like, how do you draw them? So yeah, at this stage of their story, Matt and Rand are still pretty much in awe of Moraine. I guess Rand slightly less than Matt, because Rand at least asks her, like, why are you in the Two Rivers? He says that he asked her and then immediately regretted it, like he just wished that he hadn't asked her. Did she perform some sort of compulsion? I know that she can't because she's bound and she's not Black Aja, so she can't like perform compulsion on people. But like, did she somehow did something to I don't know, make the boys do what she wanted or like make them more compliant to her wishes or her presence? She gives them a token. It's a Tarvalon mark that the boys are gonna carry with them for a while until they get lost, and that's how Moraine can actually track them if they get separated. Immediately, as soon as she presses the token in his hands, Rand is like, he didn't want to like give it up, that he was very eager to do any kind of odd jobs for her. She's saying that she's in Eamon's Field because she's a student of history and that she wants to get to know the stories of Eamon's Field. And Rand is like, when he asks her, immediately he wished that he hadn't. And I'm like, why is that? Is it some kind of weaving, or is just, you know, he felt embarrassed by it, maybe? I don't know. When she says, you know, yeah, I'm here to collect stories also from when before Eamon's Field was called, you know, Eamon's Field, and the Two Rivers was called something else, and Matt is like, what should it be called? Like, it wasn't called anything else, because there was nothing before Eamon's Field. He's like, yes, Matt. As usual, your great sense of time is coming through. And actually, that's pretty funny, kind of like ironic justice, I guess, that afterwards he gets, well, the curse and gift of having the memory of so many people before him just like poured into his head, into his consciousness. I don't know if Robert Jordan had already like planned this ahead. A lot of Matt's character in general is steeped into this idea of history and memory, because he's the one who has already the strongest connection to Manetheren. Him and Egwene can occasionally speak the old tongue or understand the old tongue without, you know, having studied it or anything. After being to Ruidian, he also has the memories of all the, you know, of like a million generals that have come before him. So it's interesting how it's already like part of his character, even though we don't know anything about him yet, apart from the fact that he's a prankster and he's a bit ridiculous, but also has a heart of gold, which is, you know, the unlikely, unwilling hero is sort of his trope, I guess. I guess that's it for this episode. Very little happened, but also a lot of things happened. It's just like a sweeping chapter. Anyway, so that's it for today. I have Chibis for the episode, Master Luhan, Ewin Finngar, and Padan Fain. Padan Fain looks a little bit like a monk, but I also kind of like how shifty he looks, so I'm gonna keep it that way. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you liked it. I'm trying out different sign-offs, so what do you think of this one? May the wheel weaves. I don't know if I can say it every time. First because it's kind of cheesy, and second because I can't really pronounce it without stumbling. May the wheel weaves. May the wheel weaves? May the wheel weave? The wheel weaves as the wheel wheels. I can't say it, it's too hard. I can just go with the simple bye, guys, see you later, see you next time. If you can think of a better sign-off for me, please write it in the comments below, because I'm like really lost on what to say, apart from like bye. I'll see you in the next episode with a better sign off. Bye guys.